Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another reading of 1001 Nights. I am your host this evening. My name is Joanna Godwin-Seidl. You are listening to the music of Kamyab Saderi, and I am going to leave you with this music for just 2 seconds while I invite two groups on to join us for the reading that I always invite on for the reading, and then we will get going straight away.
گفتمش شیرین ترین آواز چیست چشم غمگینش به رویم خیره ماند گفتمش شیرین ترین آواز چیست چشم غمگینش به رویم خیره ماند قطره قطره اشکش از مژگان چکید لرز افتادش به گیسوی بلند زیر لب غمناک خواند ناله زنجیرها در دست من گفتمش آنگه که از هم بگسلند خنده تلخی به لب آورد و
I'm just going to turn Kamyab down a little bit and then I will be with you. There we go. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Joanna Godwin-Seidl. As I said, I am your host this evening. I run the theatre company in Vienna called Vienna Theatre Project. And during the many lockdowns, we started reading 1001 Nights with my colleague, Saman Gerard, to keep people entertained who are stuck at home. We have still carried on reading. We've almost decided more or less to read. Actually, we have decided to read the whole book. We are on volume 5 already? I think we're on volume 5 already. There are 17 volumes altogether. We, I believe, are the first people to ever read the whole book. There are people who got up to volume 7 and then gave up. We're going to try and read the whole book if we can. Hopefully, however, we will then carry on reading when there are no more pandemics around and we are not all in lockdown. Unfortunately, next week in Austria, parts of Austria go into lockdown again. Wish us all luck, everybody. Anyway, here we go today with another reading for you of 1001 Nights. I hope you are all sitting very, very comfortably. I hope I have some beautiful incense burning behind me this evening. I brought my beautiful Aladdin's lamp into my office with me for the reading. I hope you are sitting very comfortably. I hope you have a very nice drink to keep you entertained for the evening. And without further ado, I shall begin. Now, when it was the 369th night, she said, "It has reached me, O auspicious king, that when the warders had recounted the case of the Persian egromancer, they held in prison and his weeping and his wailing, the prince at once devised a device whereby he might compass his desire, and presently the guards of the gate, being minded to sleep, led him into the jail and locked the door. So he overheard the Persian weeping and bemoaning himself in his own tongue, and saying, Alack, and alas for my sin, that I sinned against myself and against the king's son, in which I did with the damsel, for I neither left her nor won my will of her. All this cometh of my lack of sense, in that I sought for myself that which I deserved not, and which befitted me not the like of me. For whoso seeketh what suiteth him not at all, falleth with the like of my fall. Now, when the king's son heard this, he accosted him in Persian, saying, How long will this weeping and wailing last? Say me, thinkest thou that hath befallen thee that which never befell other than thou? Now, when the Persian heard this, he made friends with him and began to complain to him of his case and misfortunes. And as soon as the morning morrowed, the warders took the prince and carried him before their king, informing him that he had entered the city on the previous night at a time when audience was impossible. Quoth the king to the prince, Whence comest thou, and what is thy name and trade, and why hast thou travelled hither? He replied, As to my name, I am called in Persian Hajar. As to my country, I come from the land of Fars, and I am of the men of art, and especially of the art of medicine and healing the sick and those whom the jinns drive mad. For this I go around about all countries and cities to profit by adding knowledge to my knowledge, and whenever I see a patient, I heal him. And this is my craft. Now, when the king heard this, he rejoiced with exceeding joy and said, O excellent sage, thou hast indeed come to us at a time when we need thee. Then he acquainted him with the case of the princess, adding, If thou cure her and recover her from her madness, thou shalt have of me everything thou seekest. Replied the prince, Allah save and favour the king. Describe to me all thou hast seen of her insanity, and tell me how long it is since the access attacked her. Also, how thou camest by her, and the horse, and the sage. So the king told him the whole story, from first to last, adding, The sage is in jail. Quoth the prince, O auspicious king, and what hast thou done with his horse? Quoth the king, O youth, it is yet with me, laid up in one of my treasure chambers. Whereupon the prince said to himself, The best thing I can do is first see the horse and assure myself of its condition. If it be whole and sound, all will be well and end well. But if its motor works be destroyed, I must find some other way of delivering my beloved. Thereupon he turned to the king and said to him, O king, I must see the horse in question. Haply I may find in it somewhat that will serve me for the recovery of the damsel. With all my heart, replied the king, and taking him by the hand, showed him into the place where the horse was. prince went around it, examining its condition, and found it whole and sound. Whereat he rejoiced greatly and said to the king, Allah save and exalt the king. I would fain go into the damsel that I may see how it is with her. For I hope in Allah to heal her by my healing hand through means of the horse. Then he bade them take of the horse, and the king carried him to the prince's apartment, where her lover found her wringing her hands and writhing and beating herself against the ground, and tearing her garments to tatters, as was her wont. But there was no madness of the jinn in her. And she did this, but that none might approach her. When the prince saw her thus, he said to her, No harm shall betide thee, O ravishment of the 3 worlds, and went on to soothe her and speak her fair, till he managed to whisper, I am Kamar al-Akmar. Whereupon she cried out with a loud cry and fell down fainting for excess of joy. But the king thought this was epilepsy brought on by her fear of him and by her suddenly being startled. Then the prince put his mouth to her ear and said to her, O Shams al-Nahar, O seduction of the universe, have a care for thy life and mine, and be patient and constant. For this our position needeth sufferance and skilful contrivance to make shift for our delivery from this tyrannical king. My first move will be now to go out to him and tell him that thou art possessed of a jinn, and hence thy madness, but that I will engage to heal thee and drive away the evil spirit, if he will at once unbind thy bonds. So when he cometh into thee, do thou speak him smooth words, that he may think that I have cured thee, and all will be done for us as we desire. Quoth she, hearkening and obedience. And he went out to the king in joy and gladness, and said to him, O august king, I have by thy good fortune discovered her disease and its remedy, and have cured her for thee. So now do thou go into her and speak her softly, and treat her kindly, and promise her what may please her. So shall all thou desirest of her be accomplished to thee. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. Take a sip of water. I don't know if you've noticed, I do apologise for yawning so much this evening. I'm a little bit tired. Now, when it was the 370th night, she said, It has reached me, O auspicious king, that when the prince feigned himself a leech and went into the damsel and made himself known to her and told her how he purposed to deliver her, she cried, hearkening and obedience. He then fared forth from her and sought the king and said, Go thou into her and speak her softly, and promise her what may please her. So shall all thou desirest of her be accomplished to thee. Thereupon the king went in to her, and when she saw him, she rose, and kissing the ground before him, bade him welcome, and said, I admire how thou hast come to visit thy handmaid this day. Whereat he was ready to fly for joy, and bade the waiting women and the eunuchs attend her and carry her to the hammam and make ready for her dresses and adornment. So they went in to her and saluted her, and she returned their salams with the goodliest language and after the pleasantest fashion. Whereupon they clad her in royal apparel, and, clasping a collar of jewels around her neck, carried her to the bath and served her there. Then they brought her forth as she were the full moon, and when she came into the king's presence, she saluted him and kissed ground before him. Whereupon he joyed in her with her joy exceeding, and said to the prince, O sage, O philosopher, all this of thy blessing, Allah increase to us the benefit of thy healing breath. The prince replied, O king, for the completion of her cure, it behoveth that thou go forth, thou and all thy troops and guards, to the place where thou foundest her, not forgetting the beast of black wood which was with her, for therein is a devil. And unless I exorcise him, he will return to her and afflict her at the head of every month. With love and gladness, cried the king. O thou prince of all philosophers, and most learned of all who see the light of day. Then he brought out the ebony horse to the meadow in question, and rode thither with all his troops and the princess, little weeting the purpose of the prince. Now, when they came to the appointed place, the prince, still habited as a leech, bade them set the princess and the steed as far as eye could reach from the king and his troops, and said to him, With thy leave, and at thy word, I will now proceed to the fumigations and conjurations, and here imprison the adversary of mankind, that he may never more imprison the princess. After this, I shall mount this wooden horse, which seemeth to be made of ebony, and take the damsel up behind me, whereupon it will shake and sway to and fro, and fare forwards, till it come to thee, when the affair will be at an end, and after this thou mayst do with her what thou wilt. When the king heard these words, he rejoiced with extreme joy. So the prince mounted the horse, and taking the damsel up behind him, whilst the king and his troops watched, bound her fast to him. Then he turned the ascending pin, and the horse took flight, and soared with them high in the air, till they disappeared from every eye. After this, the king abode half the day, expecting their return, but they returned not. So, when he despaired of them, repenting him greatly of that which he had done, and grieving sore for the loss of the damsel, he went back to the city with his troops. He then sent for the Persian who was in prison, and said to him, O thou traitor! O thou villain! Why didst thou hide from me the mystery of the ebony horse? And now a sharper hath come to me, and hath carried it off together with a slave girl, whose ornaments are worth a mint of money, and I shall never see anyone or anything of them again. So the Persian related to him all his past, first and last. And the king was seized with a fit of fury, which well nigh ended his life. He shut himself up in his palace for a while, mourning and afflicted. But at last his wazirs came to him and applied themselves to comfort him, saying, Verily, he who took the damsel is an enchanter, and praised be Allah who hath delivered thee from his craft and sorcery. And they ceased not from him till he was comforted from her loss. Thus far concerning the king. But as for the prince, he continued his career towards his father's capital in joy and cheer, and stayed not till he alighted on his own palace, where he set the lady in safety, after which he went in to his father and mother, and saluted them, and acquainted them with her coming, whereat they were filled with solace and gladness. Then he spread great banquets for the townsfolk. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to love you and leave you this evening. I cannot read another word. I am so tired this evening. I have no idea why, but I am. So I am going to wish you all, as usual, many, many blessings wherever you are in the world. Please do make sure you take care of yourselves and mask up. Do whatever you have to do to make sure that you are healthy, safe, and happy. And I believe I will be seeing you. Unfortunately, Saman can't make it this week, but I will be seeing you very gladly tomorrow evening again for the next installment of 1001 Nights. And let's see if those two are finally going to get married after all the drama they had with the horse. And what's going to happen to the horse? The sage seems to have disappeared from the story now somewhat. We don't know what happened to him. But let's hope that our two loving prince and princess will be able to get married in tomorrow's installment and see what happens next. So take care. Good night from me. Again, many blessings. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Take care.